1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We have called.
Monday.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Amy, if you wouldn't mind taking a roll, please.
Sure. Judy Neville, absent. Tom Schulte.
Here.
Okay, me here. Todd.
Present.
Michael Chen, are you online or anywhere? Okay. Chris Labrie. Victor Alvarez,
Here.
Maria Weingarten. Bob Hamill.
Here.
Combs. Are you
Here.
there? Yep.
Yes.
And James Yao. Okay, no James.
We'll see.
So
We have Colm for an alternate. We can have him have a vote and have him be seated for
Chris.
Yeah, fine.
Okay,
Okay, I need a motion to have Colm sit in for Chris Labrie.
Moved.
Victor, second.
Second.
Tom, all in favor? Opposed? I don't think you can vote on your own, Colm.
seated yet.
We're throwing a
can't vote
flag.
yet 'cause
We're
I'm
throwing
voting-
that's a violation flag. So moved. Now you can vote for yourself.
We need Robert's Rules of Order on that one.
Well, we had them. You broke them. Okay. Okay. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pop.
Seated.
Same.
I
hope I can stay seated.
Motion second. All right. All in favor of moving Bob to fill in as an alternate,
Aye.
including Colm? Opposed? None? So moved. Okay. All right. Well, we have quorum, so we can approve the minutes. I have a motion to approve the minutes from the February 28th meeting.
So moved.
I'll
Second.
move.
Any edits, discussion,
Nope,
anything?
I'm
Okay.
good.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Okay.
Am I taking minutes or?
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Good.
Okay, we're going to talk about two items tonight for the WPCA. We have Attorney Hollister here to discuss and present the application for 51 Main, and then Tiger, we're going to do the fee discussion today, just to get a lay of the land in terms of where we are for everything we'll vote on in June. Okay, okay, all right. I welcome you to come make the presentation. I do want to clarify one thing. I think this is day one. So we need some clarity on our timing. This is our first meeting since we received the application. So I guess we can do this one of two ways, and I'm okay either way, whatever you want to do. This is day one, and this starts the clock for 65 days, or I don't know what anybody else might think day one is, whenever you got the application, Tucker, I guess.
Well, I'm happy to start by weighing in on that for the.
Yeah, let me know your thoughts. And if you don't think it's day one, we may have to ask for a 30-day extension. I'm okay either way.
Okay. The statute says the day of receipt is either the next regularly scheduled meeting or 35 days, whichever is sooner.
Okay,
So this was submitted March 14th. So the 35 days would be the
call it the 20th or 19th.
17th or 18th of April. So
Okay.
65 days. So you're 25 days into your
Okay.
65 days, but you can get to the third week of June without an extension.
Is that when you received it, Tucker? What's your sense?
I believe the original application was received by Public Works on the March 14th date. I received it in our office for this group on April 26th.
Okay, let's do this. Do your presentation. Let's see if we can, because we will have a WPCA meeting in June to do the final sewer fee. So, and that's June 13th. That work?
Yes,
That's in the time window. And if for some reason I may come to you for an extension into July, we'll have that conversation, but we'll know that in a couple of weeks. Is that all right?
that's fine.
Okay. That fair?
All right. Well, thank you and good evening, Chairman Lavieri and Commissioners. I'm Attorney Tim Hollister representing 51 Main Street LLC. With me is Leonard DeAndrea, professional engineer, DeAndrea Surveying and Engineering. The application in summary is as follows.
Sorry, this is actually for the Zoom people. Everybody thinks it's to amplify you, but it's not for them.
Okay,
I'm glad you got the mic.
thank you, Tucker.
I think you're on. Yep.
The application is for a sanitary sewer permit, which is, in this instance, is applied for a connection with the proposed redevelopment of 51 Main Street, which will consist of preserving and relocating on-site the existing structure, and then behind it, adjacent to Town Hall and its parking lots, right out these windows to our right or your left, constructing a new building with 20 rental apartments. As I think you know, 51 Main Street is already connected to the public sewer system. It is currently vacant. Its most recent use was as an office. So the specific sewer proposal is to increase the discharge from the minimal amount for office use to 6,150 gallons per day, which is what is needed for the residential use. We just went over the application filing and the deadline. I would just note that this was filed under the town sewer rules, section 203, which says that the application is directed to the engineering department. Section 326, which talks about a sanitary permit for a greater discharge. And then 327, which talks about a change in the use that generates the discharge. I have to note for the record, we had some correspondence email about this with staff when the application was first filed. The town's sewer rules say that a sanitary sewer permit is filed with and issued by the engineering department, not the WPCA. My information is that there are other such permits that have been approved by town staff without coming before the WPCA itself. So I've said I don't understand why this application was referred here. We're here because we were told to be here, but not because we believe that that is the correct procedure under the town rules. In any event, on February 13th of this year, when 51 Main was before the Planning and Zoning Commission, Town Engineer Coplet issued a memo acknowledging that the applicant had conducted a video inspection and flow monitoring, which Mr. DeAndrea will expand upon in a minute, and had confirmed capacity. I just want to read a sentence from her memo. Quote, she said, the results from the completed existing flow evaluation performed within Main Street, along with calculations provided, demonstrate that the existing sewer main in Main Street appears to have sufficient capacity for existing sewer flows combined with the project's proposed post-development flows, maintaining sufficient additional available capacity in the existing main, unquote. And then in March, after we filed the application, Mr. Mann from Public Works also confirmed the available capacity. And finally, I would note that in several times in 2022, when the Weed Street application was before you, the town engineer stated on the record several times that, quote, there are no known issues, unquote, with the New Canaan sewer system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. DeAndrea.
Good evening. My name is Leonard DeAndrea, Connecticut professional engineer with DeAndrea Surveying Engineering, PC. We provided land surveying and engineering services for the applicant. To me, this is a bit unusual. I can't think of all my years of experience going back to the early 80s where I've had to come before a water pollution control authority or a sewer department for that matter to replace an old blade pipe leaky lateral, usually handled by the engineering division. And in some towns, it's now become absolutely mandatory to review the sewer lateral itself, even if it's for an addition, if it's leaking, because that's a big problem that every municipality, when I say leaking, the older clay pipes, which is what this is, a 5-inch diameter clay pipe, they have short sections. They are not watertight seals and they leak out, they leak in. In addition to illegal sump pumps tied in with groundwater, it's the same issue. The groundwater, be it natural or not, gets into these leaky pipes, and that just adds undue capacity or stress on the sewage treatment plant. As noted, it's not an issue of capacity at all. Demonstrated by the flow monitoring, the inspections of the collector lines in the street, there's plenty of capacity. What we looked at here is we had a building that we're taking and moving it forward. We have a new apartment building that would be going behind it. We need to connect it to. And from our inspections, we saw that this was, in fact, a pipe that's as old as a sewer line in the street, and in fact was repaired about 38 years ago when there was a break from a water line going. To me, that's just sound engineering practice to say to our client that you need to replace the sewer line, because if there's problems, it can only hurt your development later on with a backup. It can only hurt the system in the infrastructure itself. So we're doing all this work. We're bringing in utilities to the property anyway. We're cutting into the road for that purpose. So it made to us total sense to recommend that. In addition to that, the sewer use rules and regulations of the town of New Canaan, item 216, antiquated building sewer lateral connections. It's recommended that they be replaced. Acceptable building sanitary sewer material. It's recommended that it be plastic tight pipe, which is exactly what we're putting in. The existing capacity of the lateral is not an issue. It's a 5-inch diameter pipe. The new pipe is a 6-inch interior diameter. So they match up quite well. They don't make a 5-inch. And we take it towards the sewer collector in the street, and that's where we make the reconnection back to that tab. So to me, this was the most appropriate way. I don't think it would be proper for me to advise my client, let alone the engineering division, to allow this lateral to stay when we're doing this amount of work. And we're cutting into the street anyway. And that's why it's been proposed. So I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's absolutely in line with the sewer use rules and regulations. Yes.
Okay, good. Mr. Chairman and members, that's everything we have to present tonight. I will just ask aloud with capacity confirmed. I don't know that there's anything left for this WPCA to review. There's an engineering issue and make sure that the pipe fits right and is the right size, et cetera. But we think we have complied with 326 and 327, and I'll ask if we would love to have an approval tonight so we can move on, but that's the sum total of our presentation.
Yeah, we can't vote on it tonight because we didn't notice a vote, but I also, we're looking at it really for the first time. So we'll do it in June. I doesn't seem horribly complicated. I have only one question, I guess. P&Z denied the application. Does that come into play into our discussion, or how does that work?
It's in court.
It's in court
and
for,
you have your jurisdiction, they have theirs.
Yeah,
They
okay.
rule on the land use, you rule on one of the utilities, and it's two separate parallel.
So we don't wait, we do it in parallel. Okay, okay. Well, I don't know if anyone has any questions. I think the explanation is pretty simple and straightforward, but we need to get Tiger and Maria to give us their thoughts and input, and then we'll process this and deal with it in June.
Okay.
James or anybody? Colm, anything? No.
I'm just curious. If we make a decision to approve, does that give or take any weight away from the P and Z consideration?
None. It won't even be part of the P and Z court proceeding because it's separate agency, different time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, we
All
could
the-
ask Peter that any thoughts from your point of view? Yeah, same. Yeah, okay. No, that's a good question. All right, I think that's all. That's great. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. Tiger, we'll move on to the review of the and discussion of the fee. Sure.
Do you have a copy of that video that they were talking about before?
You want to see that? Honestly, want to see that? They're not.
Still
If
a
you-
live meeting.
If you have insomnia, you certainly enjoy that.
Tucker,
video.
do we need a public hearing on the approval of the fee, right? And do we need a public hearing to have, when we approve, to have on this conversation? Peter left. Yeah, just, okay. Yep, peace. Okay, let me get my analysis. Oh, you have it here. And I just want to confirm, no issues with getting we're approving this in May and June. No issues with getting the tax bills out for this or for the mill rate, correct? Okay, good, good. Because if we had to give everybody a couple of weeks or a week or two of discretion, we could do that if we thought they weren't going to be in their hands by July 1st, but it should be no problem. Okay, okay. So what are you proposing?
What are we proposing? So, it's an excellent question. So we gave you our talking points for, this past year for fiscal 23 into fiscal 24. The process is working well. We still have some delinquencies on non-payment, even back to the beginning of the inception of the sewer use fee.
Hey, Tiger, how long, how much in arrears is someone before they're considered delinquent?
The fact that they don't pay puts them into arrears or delinquent. We haven't necessarily put it into a collection system. I think we're at that point where, you know, at 3 years out, we have one person who hasn't paid since its inception, right?
Yeah,
So
well, that
that
would
person-
definitely, I mean, is it like if you're 2 months late, 3 months, late, but is it, you know, when do you consider them delinquent?
I would consider them delinquent after 60 days, 90 days, you know, the town of Cheshire does 60 days, right? So
Okay.
you're, well, you know, at the moment, actually, they do it at the moment that it closes, you get a notice the next day. If you didn't, you'll get a notice with a, they add on a interest rate.
Right.
So they'll add on a penalty and it'll continue. And then after 4 months, they automatically drop you into collections.
Okay.
So they're a little bit more stringent. I don't necessarily think we need to go that route, but you know, we could look at it. I do know that, you know, like I said, they're a little bit harder, but they, you know, they need the money more.
Mhm.
So, but so far the system's going quite well. Last year we compressed our 4 residential fee categories to 3. We're trying to get down to 1. Other municipalities just have 1 fee. Eventually, hopefully we might be able to work towards that. Last year, we also didn't have any increases on the residential commercial side. We left it flat and we increased the septage by
Right.
$5. So that was a nominal increase, but that kept us in line with our neighbors as far as where we are. We're a little bit on the high side comparatively speaking to our neighbors, but we're not the highest, we're not the lowest. We're a little bit on the higher side. So going forward this year, we're looking at a 5% increase across the board for all 3 categories for the residential side. And then all the categories for the commercial side, there's 6 categories plus business condos. The only thing we're not changing is the septage fee. I'd like to keep that flat only because, like I said, we're in that window. And we make about $400,000 a year on septage fees, but they don't necessarily have to dump here in town. If they go somewhere else, we actually lose the money. So in order to try to gain more money on an increase in fee, we might necessarily lose more revenue because they go elsewhere, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a catch-22. I'd like to kind of stay in the middle there. You know, there's a thought to increase fees each year commensurate with everyone, but I feel that there's much more to lose than to gain on that. So on the residential side, if we went with a 5%, what we did was we said 5% and then rounded it up to nearest 0 or 5. Okay, so that nearest 5 number or 0 number. So necessarily didn't work out perfectly at 5%. It's 5.5, 5.2, 5.1 for the 3 categories. And it'll be a $15, $20, or $30 increase for the 3 residential categories from R1, 2, and 3. And then on the commercial side, a 5% increase brings us from either a $15 increase for a business condo or the lower end of the category C1 at $40 all the way up to our category 6, which is currently at $10,200. It would raise it $500 to $10,700. So that kind of tells you exactly where we are, given the fact that we didn't increase it last year and we had stayed around 2-3% in the previous years. We feel that that's a fair increase. The larger discussion has to be had on the major maintenance fund, whereby given the capital outlay that we've been experiencing over the past couple of years and that we will be experiencing going forward, the plant was commissioned in 1998, so she's 25 years old right now. We've replaced our UV system. That was an $800,000 system. We replaced both clarifiers, and we're working on other major maintenance items, but we have over the next 4 years, at least $500,000 a year for the I&I study. Right. So it's a $2 million nut. You funded the first 500, but for the next 3 years, we're going to have 500,000. Then we'll probably have monies to do more work later for that. So just given that $500,000 as a basis, and then anything else we have with the plant, I estimated the capital for the next years out, the next 5 years out at $1 million. If we don't try to recoup that money, we'll drain the major maintenance fund somewhere in the fiscal 27 year, fiscal 26 to fiscal 27 years. It'll go away. So our thought was that we needed to, in essence, start to ramp up the sewer use fee in order to make up that difference, and then hopefully get to a point where we're hovering around, say, $750,000 in that fund, just to make sure that we've got money available. But that will be a substantial increase over the next 3-4 years in order to make that. The other thought is that you can take it out and bond it instead if you want to, and then pay the interest in principal instead of trying to recoup it inside. Prior to the enactment of the sewer use fee, we had the sewer maintenance fund or the major maintenance fund, and we would fund some of that out of the major maintenance fund, and then the rest was funded out of capital on the sewer, and the mill rate was set to absorb that. So that was the way it had gone for a while. We had taken some of the money out of the major maintenance fund in order to soften the blow, so to speak. Very similar to what you do on the general fund side, where you take it out of the fund balance, and then the rest was incorporated into the mill rate increase for the sewer district. We haven't done that over the past couple of years. We've been, the major maintenance funds was very well funded, but given the capital outlay that's been required, we're seeing that it's going to eventually run out. We're gonna deplete itself because we're not replenishing it. In the past, we were replenishing about what we were taking out when we were on the mill rate side. So we were putting in about 400,000, taking out about 400,000. So it had an equalization there. So it's a thought as to, how you'd like to, whether or not you want to keep that fund. I think it's a good thing to keep that fund. It's just a question of what level you'd like it at, and then what would be at that point in time, either the contribution from the sewer use fee or bonding, or a combination thereof. That'll have to be a discussion amongst the board members at that point to determine how you'd like to do that. But, if you look at our 5-year projection, somewhere around 26, 27, we go into the red.
So Tiger, if we were to assume the approximately 5% increase in all the different ways you're recommending, does that, I guess I'm having trouble following, does that keep the major maintenance fund flat? No. So
No,
that's
it
not
will-
enough
it
to
will-
even keep it. It's still going to run out.
Still going to run out, right? That the projection that we have is a 5% sewer fee increase annually, and the sewer operating fund is actually, our expenses we've estimated at a 2.5% increase, because we've been around 2.5% on
Right.
average throughout.
Right.
So we average it at a 2.5% increase going forward through 25 all the way out to 29.
Right.
We estimated a 5% increase in the sewer fee every year through 29, and we still show ourselves
Right.
going with $1 million of capital outlay every year. We show ourselves going into the red in 27.
So even putting aside the issue whether or not the major maintenance fund is currently sufficient to meet future needs, what you're saying is we would need to be over and above the recommended 5% if we meant to accumulate in the major maintenance fund, or to even keep it steady.
Correct.
I see.
Correct.
Have you done?
If we were to do exclusively from fee contributions, and
If you were, you're right. If you were done,
Got it.
do it exclusively from fee contributions, that's
I see.
correct.
You're saying you can use town capital for the capital project, you would not use the fund?
Well, he was asking.
You could bond it instead of use it
You can,
and
right,
not
you
drown
can
it
bond
down.
it, or you can
Yeah.
make it up by the sewer use fee, but there would be a substantial increase in the sewer use fee in order
right, if
to
right. If we wanted to
to-
replenish that fund solely from fee contributions.
Have you run the
it's gonna
numbers
be-
on what the percentage increase would be to keep it?
We've done preliminary calculations as to where it would be to then, in essence, I'll call it bottom out, but soften out and go in the $600,000 range.
What's
Yes,
that? Sounds like we shouldn't have been zero last year, but that's water. under
I don't
the
think it would,
bridge.
the amount that's the amount that's coming out, like this 5% increase is only bringing back about $80,000 on the residential side, right? And about 20,000 on the commercial side. So given the fact that where we are from the plant standpoint, in and we happen to be in a interesting situation. We're at 20 years old for the plant, so all the major components are starting to then have to be replaced. The UV system at $800,000, that's a substantial amount of money.
I mean, I'm not saying we're going there, but what's that number? 20% compound rate?
It was, well, we
Bonds.
had it initially starting at a 25 and then softening down from there, but that was yes, it was in the 25 range, then say closer to 18, 19, and then drop down below. And then after about 5 years, we would be at around 600 and change. And, I didn't calculate out what that would be as a rate for the payer. We just calculated the rate. We calculated the percentage increase, not necessarily what that would do to the rate. So
Maybe for June, it'd be good to know that. And also, what if we took $3 million in bond for 3 years of projects? And you didn't touch the fund.
It seems to me
You'd
that
fund it, you'd
the
replenish
capital
it. next-
projects, how long are they? I mean, they're like a 20-year
Yeah, they're-
improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so to me, it seems like it's fairer
Yeah.
to bond it
Yeah.
and then, so people,
Exactly.
pay their pro rata share.
That's a
Right.
big hit
That's-
to have to pay a 20-year.
That's correct. We're trying to make up.
Expense.
I'm just laying out the two goalposts. And is there any consideration there to these, the projects that we're facing and what their costs are, the various developments, Weed Street, et cetera? Obviously, we don't know whether they're going to happen, but
Those
how
are
impactful are those on?
those aren't necessarily
expenses.
affecting, the
It's
plant
more-
in
it's
that,
more sewage.
to that situation. That would be more on the operational side. As far as, operating the cost to operate the plant, the nominal increase there. The I&I study and the things that we're doing will help us soften the blow if there was future development, and then help the plant run more efficiently as well.
But obviously, all things being equal, it would be upward exertion on rates.
Correct.
I'm just wondering if we were to bond we could look into this. In other words, do zero drawdown for 3 or 4 years
Mhm.
from the fund and and bond that delta versus take it out of the fund. The fees probably doesn't even need to go up that much, but you could replenish the fund and build it back up again.
Correct. I
And
think
then,
also
and then
might
3 or
get-
4 years from now, you decide what you want to do then. You could continue to bond it, or you could do half, or you get all kinds of options, but
I think also at that point in time, a lot of the components that we're replacing now with the 20-year mark will
Will
find
have been-
a softening again, whereas now we're a little bit
Yeah.
hard on it, and
Yeah.
we'll see a little softening, and
Yeah.
it might be a way to bridge the
I just
the
think
two.
it's fair.
it's
I
only
think
fair.
I think it's more equitable.
Yeah.
Too, so if you got to do something that lasts 20 years, you bond it and you divide it up between people over 20 years.
It is true that you don't want to hit current sewer fee paying residents, that are right today pay for something that's going to be providing benefits to sewer fee residents 20
20 years
from now.
later, yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Up until a couple of years ago, we were replacing pumps and things of that nature that have a 6-year lifespan, a 7-year
different story.
lifespan. That's
But
a little
it's-
different.
The other side of it is not unfair at all to ask the current sewer fee paying residents to pay the debt service associated with
portion
the
of it,
bond
yeah.
issuance
That's
for
right.
that.
That's
So
right.
that makes
And
some
that
sense. And
number's gonna be
I think as Todd was saying, and you certainly implied earlier in your presentation, there is a balance to be struck here, and you can try to figure out what that's going to be.
One other question. You'd mentioned upfront about trying to consolidate it into one class, and maybe I'm out of the sewer history, but 3 classes, is it geography, size of house, number of residents, and how do we?
Yeah, size and cost of the residents, because originally it started on a mill rate basis. And that was basically, across the cost of the home. And that was, so we had certain, what we called tranches as far as cost of
You
residents.
said we went from 5 to
Went
3,
from 4 to 3,
4 to 3.
right?
And what's the thinking behind 1? Easier.
That's, yes.
Everybody goes to that.
Yeah,
one.
and the majority of our peers have one rate. They'll have one rate for, say, a single family home, and then a separate rate for a multifamily home, slightly less than the single family home, but nonetheless in the same ballpark. But yes, a little bit easier to try to manage. Our valuations will change once the valuations from the tax assessor are done. We'll have a reshuffling of the deck at that point in time as well.
I mean, is that when you would try to move toward one or two or?
We were, as in essence, yeah, as the lower end starts to rise, you know, closer to what would be the median, what would be the overall median, then yes, that at that point in time, that's why we looked at from 4 to 3, because we got to the point where the lower started to come up higher and we could drop one. Exact same thing. Another couple of years out, the lower end gets closer to what the median would be, and then come down to say 2 rates and then to 1.
And is commercial the same methodology? And
Commercial is no, commercial is a little bit different.
Size.
That goes by pretty much usage as far as estimated usage based upon the facility and what it is. There, I don't see not much of a change. I think you would still be in the situation where you're in with the different categories that we have.
Thank you.
Hey, Tiger, it's Colin Dobbin. I just have a question. Did you say that the multifamily housing gets a discount over what the single family housing gets? Did I hear that right?
That's in other municipalities. It's not here. Here,
Oh, okay. Because I would want to flip that around. I would say for all these new projects, let them help fund, you know, expansion or maintenance of the existing system, because they are the ones who are going to be putting, you know, more strain on it and favor the single family houses.
Definitely a good idea.
But you're saying it's a per unit, like, you know, you're not saying that a single residence would pay more than a multifamily. You're saying on a per unit, they would be
per
cheaper.
unit basis. That's correct. It was just a lower unit price per unit.
Yeah.
The other alternative too is to look at increasing your connection fee. So most municipalities have a very high connection fee.
Maybe we need to go.
All new development gets you big time with that. It's fair, actually.
If you look at our surrounding, most of the surrounding municipalities, we have their fees are quite
The hookup
quite
fees, right?
expensive.
Yeah.
Right. For that reason, right? So, you know, because you're using up available capacity each time someone hooks up, they're
Sure.
using up available capacity.
Sure.
We haven't made that change yet.
Do that.
Um,
How do we do that?
By June.
Do it by next month.
that fee is set by the Board of Selectmen.
$10,000. What?
But the fee is set by the Board of Selectmen. It can be a recommendation from the WPCA to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen set that fee.
Again, I think can we put that on the agenda for June? I
Yeah,
think it's
that's
a
a good
good
one.
idea to think through
Yeah.
That's where the
what
cost
those
of-
kinds of items might look like and then do just what you said. Have a recommendation for the Board of Selectmen. That's good.
But I mean, I think to some extent, if you do it on assessed value, those newer units will probably have a higher assessed value. So in some cases, they'll pay a little more because their assessed value will be more than that of an older home.
That's correct.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, I think, as you're hearing, for us to be an outlier on this. If this is the reality of what folks are paying if they're in other communities, I kind of think we should be joining that.
That's fine.
So for the fee, I think we'd like to see a couple of scenarios. I don't know if you do this or Josh, you do this. Okay, so I think if we were to bond it, and it's too late, I guess, for the adopted budget. So fine, we've got the fund for it, but just picking something, the next 4 years. Come up with a bond proposal for that, not to vote on or pass, but for your model and zero those out. Let us know what happens to the fund balance. And then the question would be, can we take the fee down to 4% or 3%? You wouldn't need to have 6%. By the way, you're gonna have to go to 10 or 15 at some point to cover the cost, which you don't want to do.
That's correct.
So if it would be just to see a couple of those scenarios, and then I think we could have a really good discussion around, and not only just for this rate, but also going forward, could take a little pressure off the future years and is a much fairer way to cut from those expenses. Yeah.
Agreed.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah.
And we'll review the fee idea. So go ahead.
Oh, I had one more question.
Sure.
You said that we're kind of, as a town, on the higher end?
That's for septage.
Yeah, is that plant, or is it less efficient than other towns?
No,
Like,
it's just,
why are
it's
the
just
fees
where we're setting the fee. It's just based upon how other towns have set their fees. Some have it at $110 or $120 per thousand, some are at 80. So we're at 105. We have a couple of plants around us that would accept septage from our municipality. We don't accept from other municipalities. You know, there's an affidavit that has to be signed by the homeowner, and that has to be brought to the plant in order to dump in our facility. But given the fact that some of the septic systems that the the equipment can handle more than just one house.
Mhm.
So sometimes they'll go elsewhere. And the feeling is that I wouldn't want to see that. That's lost revenue to us to go elsewhere. Just for a nominal increase. I'm a little,
Right.
we increased last year. I didn't really want to go increase. So I wanted to kind of
Yeah.
increase, see what happened
Mhm.
and then go again. If we, and then see what everyone else is doing. Everyone's been pretty much at a stasis point. We're about the only one that's moved a little bit on that. We did, but it didn't take us out of where we were. If you follow me, right? We were still in the same niche, as far as the towns go. So it didn't really affect that thought process. But the next move definitely starts to put us closer to the higher end, which I didn't, I felt like, let's see how it goes this year and see what our revenue is this year and see if there was a change in volume. If there was a change in volume, then we know that, maybe there's an issue there.
I mean, the other thing is I guess the other towns are setting their rate based on something, presumably what they think their costs are. I don't know that I trust other towns with their cost, but it is a market, so.
Correct.
Um,
I won't say
I
it's a
trust our
commodity, but
cost
it's-
accounting more than somebody else's, but. Maybe an outlier.
I had a question about the INI work.
Sure.
So you said it was 500,000 over 2 year or 4 years. And in your model here, is that in the operating
No,
expenditures?
that's in the capital.
That's in the
It's on
capital.
side. Yeah.
So part of that $1 million is half
Yeah,
of
I
that $1 million
know.
for the next 4 years. Is that? And what is, can you elaborate a little bit on that work?
It's a inflow and infiltration.
Oh,
Didn't have to ask.
Inflow is like a direct
Kind of,
connection
yeah,
into the
yeah.
system.
could be the word.
Say a catch basin is hooked up incorrectly, or a pipe is hooked up incorrectly, it's directly hooked up to our system. Infiltration is what
No, you're
Mr.
forgetting.
Andrew was speaking about as far as open pipe joints, things of that nature, where water can flow in, groundwater can flow into the pipe and then be carried to the
Or
plant.
flow out or leak out?
Or leak out, exactly, depending upon pressure, so the the INI study basically goes and takes a look at our entire system and sees where we have weaknesses, and then makes corrections to either leaky manholes, and then proposes changes to piping or, sewer lining. We just lined some of the pipe on Main Street for that exact reason. We had a couple of open joints. We lined the pipe at a nominal cost, get rid of that either leaking out or infiltration in. We're more concerned with infiltration coming in, because during a storm event, that's where we're seeing a spike at our plant. And some of the recent storm events have brought us up to our maximum capacity at the plant. That's our concern, is that if and it's not just based upon volume of water, it's based upon duration, a couple of other factors that come into it. So given all those, that's our concerns, to try to lower that and then lower the stress on the plant on those higher volume days, so that we don't run the risk of either coming out of permit or having to have a discharge in order to save the plant. That's the last act, so to speak, that we would want to have happen. So if we can find areas where we can either get people to disconnect their direct connection, either it's a sump pump or something of that nature, or we can find areas where our infrastructure is lacking or needs some work, it's money well spent. So that's what this study is, and it'll take into account a certain amount of work in the beginning to take a look at all the direct connections that we might have. And then from there, start to study the plant based upon how each segment or each sector of the system itself is functioning, and whether or not we're seeing any infiltration coming in from there. And it's, like I said, it's spread out over 4 years at $500,000 a year.
Would it be possible to actually fix every leaky pipe in town? Or is
It's
that,
possible, yeah, but I don't necessarily think it's
prohibitive?
I don't think it's cost effective at that point in time. I think that, that they would get to the point where you'd say that, there's a point of negative return there.
Right.
Where it would not, the amount of money spent to save that one leaky pipe wouldn't be worth saving the leaky pipe per se.
Have you seen these kinds of studies before? In other words, they kind of compare, they look at the users and say, this is what should be flowing through the system compared to what's actually flowing, and then they break that flow down by segments. And
That's
say,
correct.
this is a problem segment.
That's
So does it
correct.
actually tell you where the problem is, or
Yes.
do you, with that information, you can kind of
Tells us
surmise?
into the section that we're at, and then delves a little bit further, almost down to pipes. You get down to cammering the lines, then you get down to pipe segments itself.
So that will give you enough information theoretically to say, to prioritize the laundry list, right?
Correct.
So you can say, these are kind of a level 5, should have been done yesterday. Here's a level 4, that this year. Level 3 maybe can wait a little bit or isn't as bad.
That's
as-
exactly
Okay.
it. It'll give us a prioritization list as to where we need to attack.
Right. So
with the
that
greatest-
shopping list won't all hit us in 1 year.
No,
I see.
no. And then at that point in time, like you said, based upon your level, your level of stress, so to speak, or the need, we'll
Right.
then prioritize it out, and that can help drive our capital expenditures, in the plan going forward.
Any other
Tucker,
questions? Yeah, go ahead.
If you identify a weakness and where does it become the town's responsibility versus the homeowner's responsibility?
They're responsible to the pipe itself, to our main.
And would this study, would it identify the problem from the pipe to the home? So, no.
No, it's strictly our main itself.
Okay.
So if there was a leaky lateral, like Mr. DeAndrea was speaking of for 51 Main, we would not know of. It's strictly our system itself, our manholes and our mains
Okay.
themselves.
Any other questions for Tiger? Don't forget to send Victor the video to follow up. Just trying to make sure I had all the follow-ups, Tucker. Okay, we can have a motion to adjourn. Good news is we have a little break. Better news is we already did item 6 on the agenda because it was on there twice. So we already did the sewer fee update. So, okay. If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn the WPCA.
So moved.
All right. Second, Amy, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none? Okay, we're adjourned for 12, 15 minutes or so.